start talking. We're going to talk about what you just said, but we're going to repeat it.
Oh, okay. What I remember of the war was
So the war was when, where,
yes,
who, what, where, when.
yeah, okay. The war was started in September of 1939, and
Which war was it?
World War II, yeah. And at that time, they had a funny system in Europe. If one country was invaded, like the cause of Britain being in the war in 1939 was they had a treaty with Poland. So the Germans invaded Poland, and we automatically became declared war on Germany. And so it happened very quickly. And it was all very unexpected. So they had to build, they thought the Germans were able to conquer countries very quickly because they had what they called a blitzkrieg, which was they had very heavy bombing of civilian areas, and usually countries capitulated pretty quickly because most countries were not prepared for war at all. Poland in particular, in Poland they still had cavalry, and the Germans had tanks. So it was pretty difficult for the Poles to be able to stop the Germans in any way. And so very quickly the Poles left Poland before it was, as it was being invaded, and they made their way to England. And by the time, I would say, within about 6 weeks or 6 months of the war starting, Britain was the only country that was left that was not occupied. And so we had a lot of Poles in Britain, and there were so many Poles in Britain that they set up their own university, so that they, for instance, initially they would have to train a lot of people to speak English in the Polish army. So they were a major addition to the British war effort, to have all these people from Poland. Whereas France, for instance, very quickly capitulated because they didn't want Paris to be bombed by the Germans. So Paris became it became governed by a French government, but the French government was very tied in very closely with the Nazis. So any Jews that were in France were automatically rounded up by the French and handed over to the Germans.
And so, what did you have to do during the war? Tell us the story that you were telling.
Well,
how old were you?
Yeah, I was only 8 when the war started. So the first thing that the British authorities did was they issued gas masks to everyone, because the Germans in World War I had used a lot of gas to take control during the battles. So it's funny when you think about it. An 8-year-old, I had to carry this gas mask in a cardboard box, and round my neck, and they put a little tag on here saying what my name was, nothing about address. And I got on a train, and we went out to the station at Baden Mill, and we got out of the station and walked. I think it's about 1 mile to where I was.
So were your parents with you?
No, no, no. It's just all spontaneous.
So tell us how your parents put you on the train, or did they give you to teachers, or?
We were given a bag with food in it, paper bag,
What was in it?
an orange and an apple and something else. I forget what.
I think you said cookies before.
Oh no! When we got to Baden Mills, we discovered that by sheer fluke. By that time, they had rationing in England, and you couldn't get chocolate. And the train, we discovered that the train station in Baden Mills still had chocolates for sale, and the chocolates were called, I remember, 7 Boys, and it was imprinted on the chocolate, 7 Boys, and all different expressions, smiles, sad, crying, and, that sort of thing. So we didn't say anybody about that, and we were able to go back from time to time and get chocolate. But
so you went on the train by yourself.
Yes.
You say that. Say I went on the train by
Yeah,
myself.
yeah.
My parents put me on the train by myself, or with a teacher, or whatever.
I don't think the teachers didn't go with us.
So tell the story. Like my parents put me on the train
Yeah.
by myself with the gas mask and a bag of food.
Yeah. So, well, there was a terrible urgency about the idea of evacuation. They wanted to get children out of the urban areas and into the country. So we went. I think it's only about 30 or 40 miles, I think, up the Tyne to Baden Mill. And the people I stayed with, the father was a miner, and he was called Malcolm, and his son was called Malcolm as well. His son was he must have been about 18 or 19. He would have been called up, except for the fact that if he became a miner, which he didn't want to do, but it meant he wouldn't be called up into the army. And it's important, as he was a musician, that he didn't want to get injured or anything like that, to be able to play the piano and whatnot. So I only stayed with the Lodens from September till Christmas, and then I came home. So it was a very short time, like 3 months, but it had a tremendous impact on me because I had never really lived in the country. And they lived in a little cottage, and which still there, and the walls, I remember, were 2 feet thick of stone, made of stone. And the reason they were so thick was they were made of stones that were quarried from the Roman wall. And I remember they had a collection of Roman coins as well. It was quite common in that area. And my best friend at when I was at school was the blacksmith's son. And we used to have...
What was his name?
I don't remember his name at all now. But I do remember that we used to get up to mischief. They had a big I don't know what it would be. Maybe it was a dog, huge. Well, it would have been a huge doghouse. Maybe it was a sort of building for. Maybe it was a handyman's place. I don't know what it was, but we used to go in there, and I remember that we bought clay pipes, and we bought what they called plug tobacco, and you cut it to the size of the clay pipe, and you put it in, and you could smoke it. Well, that was a very good thing for me to do, because I decided I didn't want to smoke after that. I never smoked in my life after that, so I suppose I learned a good lesson from that. Barden Mill was sort of an idyllic place to live. They had, it was, although it was a tiny little village, they had everything that you would need. There was, for instance, there was a shoe shop. I don't know what they call it, shoe shop, but Mrs. Loden, the lady I was with, bought me a pair of clogs. The clogs were made with wooden soles and steel rims around them so that you wouldn't slide on them, and leather, black leather. They were soft leather. And I remember Mrs. Loden used to put them in front of the fireplace. So when I put my boots on in the morning, they were nice and warm and soft. And what else do I remember about Mrs. Loden? And I learned to ride a bicycle when I was with them. There was a hill there, and the co-op store was at the top of the hill, and Malcolm, their son, put me on the bicycle and just pushed me down the hill from the top. So by the time I reached the bottom, I knew how to ride a bicycle.
Want to take a break?
Yeah.